Coronation Street for Tuesday, the 29th of July teases that the air in Weatherfield is buzzing with anticipation as the cobblestones hum under hurried footsteps. The small, familiar, and cozy townhouse seems to be holding its breath on this bright Tuesday morning. The news spreads like wildfire. Dev Allahan and Bernie Winter are getting married, and not in the formal, predictable ceremony everyone expected, but in a whirlwind of surprises, laughter, and as is so often the case on the street, drama awaits. From the moment Bernie's text went out, save the date, the 29th of July. Bistro, 3 p.m. Wear your dancing shoes. Gossip mill wheels engaged at full speed. The bistro staff fluffed cushions and polished glassware as Bernie flitted about like a bride-to-be possessed, her excitement barely contained. Yet beneath her bright exterior lay the careful calculations of a woman determined to throw a wedding that was both heartfelt and thrifty. She'd scoured charity shops for Dev's outfit, convinced that a suit could look just as sharp if it cost a fraction of the high street price. Even Oddie, ever the dutiful son, had been roped in to model the third-hand tailored waistcoat Bernie had unearthed online. As midday approached, the bistro hummed with the gentle chaos of pre-wedding jitters. Tables were arranged in neat rows, white linens were replaced by mismatched pastel cloths, Bernie's own signature twist on tradition. The scent of freshly baked scones mingled with the sharp tang of champagne, chilled to perfection in silver buckets. Bernie, in a mint green dress, too extravagant for everyday wear, but just right for a street wedding, oversaw every detail with the precision of a general marshalling her troops. Then came the bombshell. Dev's long-estranged cousin Nikhil, the one face Dev had hoped never to see again, had sent his regrets for the registry office ceremony, but would be joining them at the bistro reception. Dev's face had gone white when the message arrived. Memories flooded back, schoolyard betrayals, whispered slurs, and the bitter feud that had fractured their family years ago. Bernie tried to calm him with a gentle touch, but the tension in his jaw was plain for all to see. Still, as the guests began to file in, Oddie, resplendent in trousers 2 sizes too large, but beaming with pride, the Fitzgerald twins, squealing at the prospect of party poppers, Rita, fussing over Dev's tie, and Audrey, dabbling in a few impromptu jokes about whether the cake would dare to collapse before the happy couple walked down the aisle, the mood lightened again. Conversation fluttered from table to table, whispers about Carla's latest hair catastrophe, conjectures on whether the vicar had remembered to bring his sermon, and inevitably, speculation about what Nikhil's arrival would mean. Bernie's own family journeyed from all corners, her mum, dressed in a lavender suit with matching hat. Her brother Les, who grumbled that a wedding without a proper band was no wedding at all, and her Aunt Maeve, clutching the locket that had belonged to Bernie's late grandmother, a piece she'd promised Bernie would take down the aisle. It was all going according to plan, until Bernie's friend Rita slid into the chair beside her with dark eyes and an urgent whisper. "They've hired a pole dancer," Rita hissed, as though the walls themselves might overhear. Bernie's eyebrows shot skyward. "Pole dancer? At a wedding?" Rita nodded gravely. "The lads from the Rovers put down a hefty deposit. They said it'd spice things up." Bernie's blood ran cold. She could imagine Dev's face twisting in scandalized horror, but more than that, she could already see half the guests abandoning their champagne flutes to circle the pole, oohing and ahhing over gyrations she'd rather not think about in her wedding dress. The carefully curated, intimate celebration she had envisioned threatened to become a bacchanalian spectacle. Yet she would not let it derail her day. With a stiff upper lip, Bernie marched over to the Rovers lads, Peter, Tony, and Gary, who were huddled in embarrassed contemplation near the bar. She explained, in no uncertain terms, that this was a family event, that Dev would not appreciate strippers, and that any such performance must be strictly outlawed on her watch. The men stammered apologies and promised, with more vigor than conviction, to handle the situation. Bernie returned to her seat, knuckles white around her champagne flute, her heart thundering in her chest. But fate had other plans. The moment Bernie turned away, she discovered her own family had been struck by misfortune. All 4 of Dev's children, Oddie included, were laid low by a sudden stomach bug. The scene that followed was a flurry of frantic calls. To Joseph Brown, Bernie's reliable neighbor and stand-in parent, to take charge of Liam, Millie, Max, and Seb, to the florist, to hold back the bouquets until next week, and to the priest, to see if they could reschedule the ceremony. But the children, pale and puffy-eyed, insisted they didn't want to miss the wedding, even if it meant puking in borrowed pews, and so Joseph, reluctantly heroic, agreed to stay home and set up a live stream of the proceedings. Tears prickled Bernie's eyes as she realized the full weight of the day's absurdity. Here she was, moments from marrying the man she loved, while her brood watched from the safety of their living room, tissues in hand. She had dreamed of all her sons and daughters cheering her on, hugging Dev Allahan as he stood at the altar, but instead, she pictured 4 queasy teenagers scrolling on their phones, trying not to retch. She swallowed hard and forced a smile, even as the ceremony drew closer. By 2:45 p.m., every chair was filled. Audrey gave Dev a reassuring pat, while Rita discreetly checked the stage area for any improvised stripper poles. Even Nikhil appeared on the periphery, leaning against the doorway with arms folded, his expression a cold mask betraying no remorse for the years of silence between him and Dev. Bernie caught Dev's eye and gave him a thumbs up, no words needed. They would do this together. Just then, Dev leaned in with a worried glance. "Bernie, did you have the necklace?" Bernie's chest tightened. In the whirlwind of last-minute crises, she'd remembered her grandmother's locket, the one containing a photo of Paul Foreman, her beloved son she still mourned every day, but she'd left it on her dressing table. Her breath hitched as she thought of facing the vows without that talisman. "I forgot," she whispered, horror creeping into her voice. Without hesitation, Dev took her hand. "I'll fetch it," he said, and set off at a jog down the cobbled street. Bernie watched him go, her heart pounding. She had no idea if he'd make it back in time, or if the moment would pass them by. The guests shuffled nervously as the minutes ticked by. Rita took the microphone, improvising a few jokes to keep the audience entertained. Oddie, looking queasier by the second, fiddled with the live stream tablet, slipping in video calls from the youngsters at home. Debbie Webster, ever the performer, decided this lull was her moment to shine. She launched into an impromptu rendition of At Last, her rich vocals filling the bistro, coaxing a few tears and a round of applause. Just as the applause died down, Dev returned, suit immaculate, locket clasped between his fingers. "Got it," he panted, sliding to a stop beside Bernie. She threw her arms around him, murmuring thanks, as the vicar cleared his throat. "We may now proceed," he said, and the hush deepened. Bernie took a steadying breath, and stepped down the aisle with Dev at her side. The rows of smiling faces blurred into one radiant glow. For a fleeting, perfect moment, all was as it should be, rings exchanged, vows whispered, and tears gleaming in eyes that sparkled brighter than any chandelier. Then, without warning, Bernie's vision narrowed, her breath hitched, and the sweet scent of roses turned to something metallic in her nose. She pressed a hand to her chest, her knees buckling. Dev lurched to catch her as she crumpled, a gasp torn from her throat. Chaos erupted. Guests sprang forward, Rita dropped her champagne flute, which shattered on the floor, Audrey's shriek echoed off the walls, even Nikhil looked helplessly on, his grudges forgotten. The vicar shrank back, bewildered, while behind them, the live stream flickered to static. And then, in a cruel twist, the first wail of an ambulance siren pierced the air. The wedding of Dev Allahan and Bernie Winter, already a roller coaster of emotion, came to an abrupt, harrowing halt. As Bernie lay trembling in Dev's arms, the street held its breath once more, wondering if this fairy tale would ever reach its happily ever after, or if it would become another legend whispered along the cobbles for years to come. The aftermath of Bernie's collapse sent shockwaves through Weatherfield. As the ambulance's wail receded down the cobbles, Dev knelt beside her, cradling her head in his hands, eyes wide with panic. Around them, guests hesitated, a tableau frozen in mid-chaos, before Rita and Audrey sprang into action, clearing a path for the paramedics. Inside the ambulance, Bernie lay pale on the stretcher, her breathing shallow but steady, while Dev climbed into the back beside her, clutching her hand. "You've got to hang on," he whispered, kissing her knuckles. "I need you. The street needs you." The paramedic offered a reassuring nod. Back at the bistro, the wedding party dispersed in stunned clusters. Debbie Webster stood clutching the microphone, her lips quivering as the last chords of her impromptu song echoed in her ears. Around her, the guests peeled off, some to follow the ambulance, others to tend to the stranded children via Joseph's live stream. Rita and Audrey's vigil. Rita Freeman and Audrey Roberts, ever the rock on Coronation Street, abandoned their meticulously planned duties to dash after the ambulance. In the back of Dev's car, Audrey murmured quiet reassurances. Rita's knuckles turned white on the wheel, but her eyes never left the road. They arrived at the hospital's A&E entrance, just as Dev helped Bernie gingerly onto a hospital trolley. Audrey clasped Bernie's hand, smoothing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "You're safe now, my love," she said. "Just rest." Rita hovered, suppressing tears. Though she and Bernie had fought over the bouquet arrangement only hours before, now Rita felt a fierce protectiveness she couldn't quell. Joseph's home front drama. Meanwhile, Joseph Brown stood in Bernie's quiet living room, for groggy children gathered on the sofa in their pajamas. Liam clutched a bucket, eyes red-rimmed, Millie curled into a ball with cold compresses on her forehead, Max scrolled on the tablet, desperate for some semblance of the ceremony, and little Seb whimpered whenever the phone camera panned to Dev's empty seat. Joseph cleared his throat. "All right, troops," he said in his most cheerful voice. "How about we make some hot chocolate, and watch the rest of your mum's big day?" A chorus of sniffles answered him. "No puking," agreed. The children nodded, Millie faintly, Liam with a solemn nod like a mini-general. Joseph set about fixing drinks as the live stream flickered to life, catching the sterile hospital corridor and the distant hum of fluorescent lights. Debbie's unplanned proposal at the bistro, the stunned guests gradually realized that the ceremony would not continue here. The caterers quietly packed away champagne flutes, the pastel linens were folded. Debbie Webster, still clutching the microphone from her performance, sensed the tension and decided to seize the moment. "Friends," she began, voice trembling but resolute, "we may not be celebrating the union of Dev and Bernie right now, but we can celebrate love wherever we find it." She took a breath, then turned to Ronnie Bailey, standing awkwardly by the bar. "Ronnie, you've been my rock, my partner in every crazy venture since we met at the Rovers. I want to spend my life with you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ronnie blinked, speechless, then took Debbie's hand. "Are you asking me to marry you?" "I am," Debbie whispered. A roar of applause exploded as Ronnie nodded, pulling her into an embrace. For a moment, the sorrow of Bernie's plight gave way to this bright spark of happiness. Even Rita managed a teary smile. The mystery intruder. Hours earlier, in the unsettling lull before the collapse, Bernie had dashed home to retrieve her grandmother's locket, and discovered a stranger rifling through her drawers. The intruder, startled, had darted away with a handful of silverware and, worse, Bernie's late son Paul's photograph. She'd confronted him on the doorstep, he'd mumbled something indecipherable about making it up to Dev, then vanished into the mist. Now, as Dev and Rita returned to the deserted bistro, they found a crumpled note on the table. "You think you can outrun the past? Your secrets belong to me." Dev's jaw clenched. "Nick Hill," he muttered. Though Dev had denied any link between his cousin's surprise attendance and the burglary, now he feared that old family grudges had grown into something dangerous. Bernie's diagnosis late that night, Dev sat in the hospital waiting room, head in hands. Rita placed a comforting arm around him as the doctor approached. "Mr. Allahan." Dev rose. "Yes?" The doctor's expression was gentle but grave. "Mrs. Winter suffered a severe panic-induced pulmonary embolism. It's a miracle she made it here in time. We've stabilized her, but she'll need close monitoring for the next 48 hours, and then a long recovery. No stress, no sudden exertion." Dev exhaled, relief and remorse mingling. "Thank you, doctor." After he left, Rita slipped him a steaming cup of tea. "She's going to be all right," she said, voice firm. "And when she wakes, she'll need us more than ever." Oddie's guilt and resolve at home. Oddie sat beside Joseph, watching the live stream flicker between the empty bistro and the hospital corridor. He felt helpless. He'd volunteered for work that evening rather than stay home, and now his mum was in danger. Guilt pricked his heart. "Joseph," he said quietly, "I need to go to the hospital." Joseph glanced at him. "You'll need Mum's permission when she wakes." "I don't care. She needs her son." With Joseph's blessing, Oddie jumped on a late-night tram to Weatherfield General. He dashed through the doors just as Dev stepped out, exhausted. "Mum's stable," Dev whispered hoarsely. Then he noticed Oddie, surprise flashing on his face. "You came." Oddie shrugged, voice cracking. "You ever think about your own kids, Dev?" "I couldn't miss this." Dev smiled through tired eyes, pulling Oddie into a brotherly hug. Nick Hill's confrontation the next morning, as Bernie lay dozing under a paler sun, Dev confronted the one man he had avoided, Nikhil Allahan. The cousin had taken an empty hospital chair, hands folded, guilt etched in his eyes. "I didn't want any part of this," Nikhil began, voice low. "But I had to see you, Dev. And when I saw you preparing to marry, I felt like I had to remind you who you are." Dev bristled. "By breaking into my wife's home? Stealing her keepsake?" Nikhil looked away. "It wasn't supposed to be malicious. I needed the photo. I'm dying, Dev." Silence. Dev's face went pale. "What?" The news hit Dev like a blow. A tumor in Nikhil's brain, incurable, aggressive. Nikhil had spiraled into despair and anger, convinced that Dev had abandoned him years ago. In his despair, he'd lashed out. Dev sank into a chair, mind racing. "You should have come to me," he rasped. "We could have found help." Tears welled in Nikhil's eyes. "I thought you'd hate me. I couldn't face you." Dev clasped his cousin's arm. "You belong to this family. And if you want help, whatever time you have left, you'll let me fight for you." Bernie's awakening that afternoon, Bernie awoke to the soft beeping of monitors and the familiar scent of antiseptic. Dev sat beside her, reading from a battered paperback. Oddie perched at the foot of the bed, scrolling news on his phone. Rita hovered just outside the curtain. Joseph had arrived with forget-well cards from the grandchildren. Bernie's eyes fluttered open. "I'm in the hospital." Dev beamed. "You gave us a scare. But you're safe." Tears slid down Bernie's cheeks. "I'm so sorry." "For what?" Dev asked, brushing her hair back. "For making me fall in love all over again." They laughed through tears, the tension of the past 48 hours melting away, if only for a moment. The road to recovery over the next week, Bernie's convalescence became the focal point of life on the street. Guests dropped off home-cooked meals, Rita organized visits in shifts, Joseph brought the children for short, cautious hugs, and Debbie Webster serenaded her with daily song dedications. Each night, Bernie and Dev lay side by side in the hospital bed, planning their real wedding, this time with no pole dancers, no last-minute burglars, and every child present. Nick Hill, too, sat with her, offering apologies and childhood stories that coaxed reluctant smiles. He promised to submit to treatment and make whatever time remained count. Oddie, balancing university work and his mother's bedside, vowed to find a way to fund Bernie's dream reception, a simple garden party in the cafe courtyard, complete with twinkling lights and a homemade cake. Looking ahead, though the ceremony had ended in sirens rather than applause, the street rallied around the couple with more love and unity than any traditional wedding could muster. In the days to come, one could expect a rescheduled ceremony in the cafe courtyard, with every family member present, children cheering and Aunt Maeve's locket gleaming in the summer sun. Nick Hill's redemption arc, as he seeks forgiveness and embraces medical treatment, his bond with Dev, and the rest of the family, mended at long last. Debbie and Ronnie's engagement blossoming into a September wedding at the Rovers, complete with official dance floor pole-free. Rita's triumph in secretly arranging a flash mob of bistro staff performing a choreographed, first dance, routine for Bernie and Dev's postponed nuptials. Joseph's pride, watching from behind the counter as 4 healthy grandchildren chase each other around tables, banners proclaiming "Welcome home, Mrs. Winter." Above all, the street learned that even the grandest plans can be derailed by unforeseen crises, but with friends as family and family as friends, love endures beyond chaos, beyond betrayal, beyond fear. Dev and Bernie's story, far from ending in tragedy, was only just beginning, proof that sometimes the most unforgettable weddings are those that almost didn't happen at all.